Welcome to Narayana IAS Academy. This is Sureka Bhaskar presenting to you the Daily News Analysis. So for today's discussion, we've picked up a number of articles from The Hindu and the Indian Express which are both important and relevant for the UPSC CSE examination. Now let us have a look at the topics one by one. The first article for the day has been picked up from page number 10 of The Hindu, India and a case for strategic autonomy. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about India's strategic autonomy with respect to that of its foreign policy, especially in the context of its relationship with that of Russia, as well as how this relationship of India with Russia will actually have impact or cause tensions with the United States, especially in the context of the Ukraine war. The second article has been picked up from page number 11 of the Indian Express, Why It's Better Late Than Never. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the ongoing debates and the need for the implementation of this particular menstrual leave in India. What are the arguments for as well as against its implementation? What are the legal and the legislative efforts that have actually been taken, as well as what are the sayings or the rulings of the Supreme Court with respect to that of the same. And finally, we will be looking into the inclusive and rights-based approach. The third article has been picked up from page number 12 of The Hindu, How Does Assam's Foreigners Tribunal Function? So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the Foreigners Tribunal, their origin, the historical underpinning or the perspective. We'll be looking into the functions, the powers as well as the recent developments. The fourth article has been picked up from page number 9 of The Hindu, a peek into the world of Thangka art at Majnu Ka Tila. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about this particular Buddhist Thangka painting, and we'll be looking at the characteristic features, the significance, the types as well as the origin. The last article for the day has been picked up from page number 14 of the Indian Express, MASCHO PIRO. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about or the sighting of the uncontacted tribe, that is the MASCHO PIRO in Peru. And here we'll be discussing in detail about the characteristic features, the livelihood, the distribution of this particular tribe. And towards the end of the session, we'll be solving few prelims as well as mains practice question. And now let us get into the discussion. The first article that we'll be discussing for today is India and a case for strategic autonomy. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about India's strategic autonomy concept, especially with respect to that of the relationship India actually shares with that of Russia and the potential impact or the threat it actually causes to the United States, especially in the context of the Ukraine war. Okay. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the concept of the strategic autonomy and the historical perspective of how this concept actually emerged from the period of independence to the contemporary times with respect to that of India, as well as how it is a part of India's foreign policy. So this particular topic can be mapped to GS paper 2 for the mains examination, effect of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interest. So moving forward, there has been a question that has been asked in the mains examination in the year 2019 with respect to that of the long sustained image of India as a leader of oppressed and marginalized nations has disappeared on account of its newfound role in the emerging global order. So, in the emerging multipolar world as well as the changing, geopolitical landscape, what is the role of India and how is it actually trying to maneuver with respect to that of its foreign policy becomes very, very important for the mains examination. Okay. So, now let us understand what this particular article is discussing about. So, recently if you see, the United States ambassador to India questioned India's strategic autonomy amid the Indian Prime Minister's visit to Moscow, highlighting the concerns of the United States over India's independent stance on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Okay. Now moving forward, let us see how did this actually build up. So the US ambassador actually stated, in times of conflict, there is no such thing called as a strategic autonomy. Strategic autonomy is nothing but the independence that a country actually, exhibits, the independence that the country actually has in its foreign policy. So, the United States ambassador has said that in times of conflict, there is no such thing called as a strategic autonomy, challenging India's foreign policy stance. And also, if you see, US National Security Advisor had actually warned against relying on Russia, stating that Russia would side with China over India any day of the week. And also the reports have actually emerged that US officials had requested India in order to postpone the Prime Minister visit to Moscow, that is Russia, due to the concurrent NATO summit on 9th of July 2024. Then moving forward, let us understand what is this concept of strategic autonomy. It is nothing but, as I told you, it is the ability of a nation in order to make any kind of independent decision that will actually best serve its national interest, okay? And this will be free from any kind of external pressure or influences on the political or the economic stance of the country. So, strategic autonomy refers to the ability of a nation in order to make independent decisions that best serve the national interest, free from external pressure or the influences. And this particular approach is especially relevant in a multipolar world where the power dynamics are very, very volatile. It is very fluid as well as complex. Also, this concept of strategic autonomy is grounded in two fundamental principles. So, what are the principles? One side, it is the independent decision making. The next one is capability and willpower. Okay. So, in the independent decision making, here you actually have the national interest, where the countries with strategic autonomy prioritize their national interest in the foreign policy decisions. Okay. The second one is upholding the sovereignty of a nation, where this principle upholds the sovereignty as well as the independence of the particular nation, allowing it to navigate the international relations without any kind of undue influence. That is, India neither being influenced by the US nor Russia, for example. Next comes the capability and willpower, under which the resources are actually important, where the nations must possess the necessary economic, military, diplomatic resources in order to support the independent policies. And the final one is resilience, which actually means the ability to withstand the external pressures, especially during the conflicts or the crisis, which is crucial for maintaining the principle of strategic autonomy. Now moving forward, let us actually have a historical overview about the emergence or the origin of this particular concept of strategic autonomy in India's foreign policy. So, all the Indian governments, if you notice, since independence have followed strategic autonomy in one form or the other, whether it is called as the non-alignment, whether it is multi-alignment or multi-directional foreign policy or strategic autonomy. So, one form or the other, the strategic autonomy was actually dubbed, or it was, used with a different vocabulary. And they did not follow this as a dogma, but they actually followed this as a foreign policy approach for the best interest of the country in order to uphold its, sovereignty from the external influences and pressure. If you see how this was actually upheld during the Nehruvian era from 1947 to 64, it was in the form of non-alignment as the cornerstone of the foreign policy, emphasis on the third world solidarity and anti-colonialism, as well as there was refusal to join either of the Western or the Soviet bloc. They were neither interested to join the United States, nor were they actually willing to move with the USSR. Then if you see post-Nehruvian period, from the period of 1964 to 1991, there was a gradual tilt towards the Soviet Union, especially after the 1971 signing of the Indo-Soviet Treaty. This is very, very important. And there was maintaining non-alignment in principle, but pursuing the closer ties with USSR. So this was actually our principle of strategic autonomy during the post-Nehruvian era. Then if you see the post-Cold War era, from 1991 to 2014, there was economic liberalization that was there, leading to greater engagement with the West, and there was a shift from non-alignment to multi-alignment, and there were nuclear tests that were in 1998 asserting strategic autonomy despite the international pressure. And if you see the contemporary period, that is 2014 onwards, more assertive foreign policy under the Modi government has been there. And there has been balancing act between the US, Russia as well as the other powers, and there is greater emphasis on India's role as a leading power in the multipolar world. Now moving forward, let us actually see what are the strategies that have been adopted by India in the Russia-US matrix, okay? So first, if we actually look into the India-Russia relations, if you see the historical context, there has been a long-standing partnership since the Soviet, that is even before the disintegration of USSR, there has been a long-standing partnership between India and the Soviet. Next one is there has been defense cooperation where Russia supplies over 60% of India's military hardware. And energy ties, it a significant increase in the oil imports from $2.4 billion in 2021-2022 to $46.5 billion in the current times. Next one is strategic alignment on issues like Afghanistan as well as Central Asia. But if you see, there are challenges where Russia's growing proximity to China, and there are also imposition of Western sanctions on Russia. If you see the India-US relations on the other hand, there has been evolution from estrangement to strategic partnership. Okay, so earlier it was actually not a very cordial relationship, but later it transcended to a strategic partnership, and there have been development in the cooperation specifically in fields of defense, technology as well as counter-terrorism. And also both of them actually share equal concerns about the influence of China in the Indo-Pacific, and also there are disagreements over India's ties with Russia, Iran sanctions as well as trade issues. And finally, there is US pressure on India to reduce the dependence on the Russian military equipment. Now moving forward, let us see how India has actually balanced between both in the US-Russia matrix. So first, refusal, that is India has refused to condemn Russia's actions directly in the Ukraine while calling for dialogue and peace. Second one, participation in both US-led Quad as well as Russia-led SCO. This is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Next one, there has been diversification of defense imports. Okay, so India actually solely does not rely on Russia. There, India has actually diversified the import of its defense, that is from the US, France and Israel, while maintaining the ties with Russia as well. Next one, it has been engaging with both the powers on issues ranging from climate change, terrorism as well as global governance forum, like the Quad was one such example, SCO was another example. Now moving forward, what is the challenge that India might actually face or it is currently facing in upholding this principle of strategic autonomy is that managing US expectations for alignment on global issues. Next one, navigating Western sanctions on Russia while preserving the vital defense and energy ties also becomes difficult for India. And also balancing the economic interests with the strategic considerations is difficult. And finally, addressing domestic and international perceptions of India's foreign policy stance. And towards the end, while concluding it actually has to be a very neutral and a balancing conclusion we need to write. That is, just as India's foreign policy, our answers also should be very, we need to play safe with it. So, India's commitment to strategic autonomy reflects its efforts to balance the great power relationship in the changed global order. Yes, of course, agreed. And as we see, as the world transitions from unipolarity to multipolarity, India's strategic autonomy will remain crucial in navigating its national interest and maintaining a balanced foreign policy. The next topic that we'll be discussing about is why it's better late than never. So in this particular article, we'll be looking into what is the necessity or the ongoing debates around the implementation of menstrual leave policy in India. What are the requirements or what is the need for such a implementation, as well as what are the arguments for it, what are the arguments against it, and what are the legal and the legislative measures and frameworks that have actually come so far. And finally, we need to discuss about how to actually develop based on the inclusive and rights-based approach. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about this concept of menstrual leave policy in India as well as women empowerment, and also this particular topic falls under mains GS paper 1 social empowerment and also under GS paper 2 vulnerable sections of the population where women actually form a part, and the other being children, elderly population, etc. Now moving forward, there has already been a previous year question asked in the 2019 prelims examination with respect to which of the following is correct with respect that of Maternity Benefit Amendment Act of 2017. So all these kind of legislation, the provisions, the beneficiaries and then the outcome in India's performance is very, very important for both your prelims as well as the mains examination. Now moving forward, let us actually understand what this particular article is discussing about. Okay, so the Supreme Court disposed of a petition, and this petition, which was actually filed in the Supreme Court, actually asked the directives by the Supreme Court itself in order to implement the menstrual leaves. But the Supreme Court stated that it is actually up to the executive branch, because we have three, criteria, right? The executive, the judiciary, as well as the legislature. So here, the Supreme Court said that it is actually the discretion of the executive branch to decide the specifics of this particular policy. And also, the court indicated that the concerns about menstrual leave should be addressed within the framework of the Maternity Benefits Act of 1961. As you see, there are also, certain provisions already mentioned under the Maternity Benefits Act, which actually provides for certain kind of leaves such as, reproduction, making it a logical place to incorporate menstrual leave provisions also under this particular act itself. Okay. Now moving forward, let us understand in detail what is this menstrual leave, what are the arguments for it, and what are the arguments against it. Okay. And also we will look at what are all the legal as well as the legislative frameworks, the formulations that have been brought so far, etc. Okay. So menstrual leave is also known as a period leave, is a policy that actually allows the employees or the students to take time off from the work or school when they are actually experiencing their menstrual pain or discomfort. So this is basically your periods. Okay. So it can be either paid leave or it can be an unpaid leave or time for rest. And in India, there is no such legislative provision for menstrual leave, and this is what they are actually asking. Okay. So now let us actually understand what is basically the need for implementing this menstrual leave policy in India. First one is the health impact or the vulnerability of women. So approximately, according to the Landsat studies, etc., if you see, 20% of the Indian women, they suffer from PCOS. This is nothing but polycystic ovarian syndrome. And around 25 million actually have endometriosis. This is nothing but the thickening of the uterine wall, which is actually characterized by severe pain during their, period outflow or when the blood is actually flowing out of the body. So these conditions can cause severe menstrual pain, and a menstrual leave policy will actually address these issues by allowing a women taking time off as well as managing their symptoms effectively. Next one, there is actually productivity loss. In case, during the days of periods, there is actually not much productivity from the women because they already undergo enough of fatigue as well as, health conditions. So the research actually indicates that menstrual related discomfort actually leads to approximately 9 days of lost productivity per employee per year. So this is also very concerning. Then if you see, there are even educational discontinuity or dropouts of school children from schools, because one is because of lack of sanitation and enough, toilets over there. And the second is because of students actually have no strength to tolerate the pain. Okay. So according to a study, 23 million girls actually drop out of school every year due to the lack of menstrual hygiene management facilities like the construction of toilets, etc., and the provision of sanitary napkins, etc. And menstrual leave in schools could actually help reduce this dropout rates and promote better educational outcomes. The next one is we actually need to promote this sense of gender equality. So here, instituting menstrual leave helps the level playing field by acknowledging the biological differences. That is the difference women actually have with that of men, and specific health needs of women, thereby promoting gender equality both in profession as well as in the schools. Next, moving on, there is actually a cultural shift. There will be a cultural shift in case we actually implement or bring this menstrual leave policy in India. How? Because we will be able to move or transcend away from the taboo or the stigma that is actually constructed around it. So, with menstruation often viewed as a taboo subject in India, a formal menstruation leave policy can help normalize menstruation as just a natural biological process, challenging the existing stigma and foster open discussion about menstrual health. It's just like, a maternal health, or it's just like the mental health that we actually undergo. Next one, what are the arguments against the menstrual leave policy in India is that the first one is potential discrimination. So the critics actually believe that providing or implementing menstrual leave could reinforce gender stereotypes and could lead a discrimination at the workplace. Next is workplace disruption. So this actually potentially can disrupt the workflow and can pose scheduling challenges. Next one, there is also difficulty in implementation because there are a lot of challenges in determining the leave days and monitoring whether these days are actually utilized effectively and they are whether compensated off properly. Next one, potential abuse is also there because you do not know whether a woman actually seeking leave that day is actually utilizing it, properly, or is actually availing the benefit for the menstruation alone. So concerns about the exploitation or abuse affecting productivity and cost. And the last one is unfair treatment because this is actually seen as an unfair to men and women without severe symptoms. Now moving forward, what are the initiatives that have actually been taken so far in India with respect to that of menstrual leave, because we do not have a proper legal framework with this regard. So India has actually seen various legislative proposals aimed at instituting this menstrual leave, reflecting growing awareness of women's health issues in the legislative domain. Notably, if you see, there are a number of private bills that have been introduced. For example, in 2017, we have the Menstruation Benefit Bill by Ninong Ering, proposed 2 days of menstrual leave for women employees in every sector. Next, if you see, Jyotimani's Right to Menstrual Hygiene and Paid Leave Bill of 2019. This particularly aimed at integrating menstrual leave into the rights framework, suggesting penalties for non-compliance under the Sexual Harassment at Women at Workplace Act 2013, a good one. Next one, the Women's Sexual, Reproductive and Menstrual Rights Bill 2018 by Shashi Tharoor, and similar bills by other members of parliament have also sought to establish these particular rights surrounding menstrual health. And next, if you see state initiatives and which of the states have actually set precedents, you can be very, very appreciative of Kerala. So you can say Kerala and Bihar. Kerala has actually been the pioneer in recognizing the menstrual challenges, allowing period leave for students as early as 1912 before independence itself. And Bihar actually followed in 1992 with a 2-day menstrual leave policy for the government employees. And the recent developments include, in 2023, Kerala introduced comprehensive menstrual and maternal leave for the students above the age of 18, showing progressive policy adoption at the state level. Now moving forward, if you see private initiatives, you can see Zomato actually giving leaves up to 10 days, and you can see Swiggy as well as Byju's also introducing similar policies. Now, what is the way forward? Proper legislative support actually has to be given. Next, there has to be remote work options like work from home options in order to keep the productivity intact. Next is cultural sensitization should be there because, proper understanding across the genders should be there. Next one, there has to be corporate accountability where we need to encourage corporate responsibility by requiring companies in order to adopt these policies with provisions of non-discriminatory practices and privacy protections. And also, to conclude, we need to say that given the large number of menstruators in India, where the women population is actually considerably high, who confront stigma, the idea of menstrual leave can no longer be regarded as merely a foreign concept, because the moment we actually talk about menstrual leave, they say that we are aping the West and claiming that we shouldn't do that. So, it is a crucial and a mandatory measure in India towards achieving a reproductive health equity in India. So these are the buzzwords that you need to reproduce in your answers as well for your mains examination. The next article that we'll be discussing about is how do Assam's Foreigners Tribunal function. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about what is this body of Foreigners Tribunal and how or in what way they can actually decide if a person is whether an Indian citizen or not, and what is the role of the border police force over here. All these things we'll actually be discussing. So here we'll be discussing about this particular Foreigners Tribunal as well as Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019, and this particular topic can be mapped to prelims as well as mains examination under GS Paper 2 Government Policies and Interventions. Moving forward, we actually have a previous year question in the year 2018 with respect to that of the proof of citizenship. So here what happens, citizenship is also important, the proof and the kinds of citizenship, whether it is by birth, whether it is by descent, it is by registration or naturalization, all this actually becomes very, very important for both your prelims as well as the mains examination. Now let us understand what this particular article is discussing about. So recently, the Assam government has instructed the border wing of the state's police not to forward the cases of non-Muslims who actually entered India illegally before 2014 to the Foreigners Tribunal, aligning with the Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019. So this particular article actually discusses about 2-3 important things. One is what is this Foreigners Tribunal? What are the functions of it? And number 2, it talks about the Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019. Okay. So moving forward, let us understand what are Foreigners Tribunals. Okay. So they are quasi-judicial bodies in India which are tasked with determining whether an individual is an illegal foreigner or not. And these tribunals possess certain powers which are actually similar to that of a civil court. Very, very important. Such as they can actually summon as well as enforce the attendance of any person. They can examine them on the oath and require them to produce, all the documents for the authentication, whether, to prove whether it is legit or not. And in case if the Foreigners Tribunal actually issue a notice, then the alleged person has 10 days to reply and another 10 days to produce the evidence supporting their claim of citizenship. Moving forward, in case if the person actually does not do within the frame of 20 days, then the FT can order their detention in a transit camp for eventual deportation of that particular person. Then they were actually established under the Foreigners Tribunals Order of 1964 that actually derives its authority from the Foreigners Act of 1946. Very, very important. And if you see the composition and the constitution of the hierarchy, the Foreigners Tribunal is headed by a member drawn from the judges, advocates and civil servants with judicial experience. And initially, if you see, the FTs were specific only to Assam due to its, unique demographic challenges which are actually there, as well as the history of constant migration that were actually going on in this particular area of Assam. The necessity of FTs in Assam arose from the persistent illegal immigration issues, particularly from the neighboring country of Bangladesh. Then, according to the Ministry of Home Affairs, there are around 300 foreign tribunals in Assam, out of which 100 are currently functioning. Now, moving forward, it is important for us to understand what is this particular Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019. It provides a pathway to the Indian citizenship for the Hindus, the Sikhs, the Buddhists, the Jains, the Parsis as well as the Christians from Pakistan, Afghanistan and Bangladesh who entered India on or before December 31st, 2014. Very, very important. And the application process for the citizenship under CAA is outlined under Section 6B of the Citizenship Act of 1955. And in order to qualify, those who actually apply or the applicants must demonstrate the country of origin, their religion, the date of entry into India and knowledge of the Indian language. And in line with this, the Assam government directed its border police not to actually forward the cases of such non-Muslims who actually entered illegally before 2014 to the Foreigners Tribunal, which that is why it was actually in news today. Okay. Now, if you see, what is this Assam border, police border organization? This APBO is a specialized unit within the Assam Police Department tasked with addressing the issues related to the illegal immigration and maintaining the border security in the state. The next article that we'll be discussing about is scrolls of self-preservation. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about this Buddhist art or Buddhist painting of Thangka art at the Majnu Ka Tila. So here we'll be discussing about the art and culture perspective of this article as it is relevant for both the prelims and the mains examination, GS paper 1, art and culture. And also Buddhism and all kind of religion as well as the takeaways, the philosophers and gurus actually become important for your examination. So there has already been a previous year question asked in the UPSC prelims in 2019 with respect to that of Buddha as well as Bodhisattvas. Okay, so here this particular topic becomes important. Okay. So moving forward, now let us understand what this particular article is discussing about. So Majnu Ka Tila had actually featured a shop with stunning Thangka painting of Avalokiteswara. Okay, so this actually means the Guru. Okay, so here the artwork is actually a silk painting with detailed gold leaf depicting this particular Avalokiteswara surrounded by other figures if you see in this particular painting. Now moving forward, let us understand what and who is this particular Avalokiteswara, also known as the Chenrezig in Tibetan Buddhism. It is the Bodhisattva of compassion and the name actually means Lord who looks down with compassion. And he is venerated in the Mahayana Buddhism. So here it is very important for us to understand what is this Heenyan as well as the Mahayana Buddhism, and it's considered as an embodiment of compassion of all the Buddhas. So here, now let us understand what is this Majnu Ka Tila, okay? Also known as New Arunanagar Colony. It is a Tibetan refugee colony which is located in the North Delhi near the banks of the Yamuna River. However, not very important, but it is important to know that this particular place is also called as Little Lhasa due to its large Tibetan community who are actually inhabiting this place. And the area gets its name from a local legend about a man named Abdullah who was known as a Majnu possessed by jinn for his intense devotion. Also, this Majnu ferried people across the Yamuna River for his quest for spiritual enlightenment. And if you see, Guru Nanak, the first Sikh Guru, actually blessed Majnu, and the area later came to be known by his name. Now moving forward, let us understand the most important relevant pick from this particular topic, that is this Thangka art. It is also known as Thangka or Thangka. It is a traditional Tibetan Buddhist painting, and this art form dates back to the 7th century. And also, whom do they actually depict is the life of Buddha and various bodhisattvas and significant events in the Buddhist history. If you see the different types of Thangkas, first is the applique Thangka, which is actually made using pieces of silk or brocade sewn together. Next is black Thangka, where it actually features the images drawn in fine gold lines against a black background. Next is a red Thangka. This actually uses red as the dominant color, often depicting the wrathful deities. And the last one is gold Thangka, where it is entirely painted with gold, symbolizing wealth as well as prosperity. The next article that we'll be discussing about is MASCHO PIRO. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the largest uncontacted tribe so far in the world who live in the Amazon rainforest of the southeastern Peru region of South America. So here we'll actually be discussing about this particular group of tribes named as the MASCHO PIRO, as well as the contacted tribes, that is another group, that is the Yain people, as well as the Manu River, that is surrounding area of which these tribe community actually inhabit. So this particular topic is important for both the prelims as well as the mains examination, particularly with respect to GS paper 1, Geography of the World, where the Amazon rainforest is very important. The indigenous tribes who live there, their geography and the environmental significance is very, very important for the examination. As we move forward, we can actually see there has already been a question that has been asked in the UPSC Prelims Examination 2013 with respect to that of the tribe as well as the states they actually inhabit. So from here, we understand that the tribes, both nationally as well as globally, become very, very important for your prelims examination. Now moving forward, let us actually understand what this particular article is discussing about. Okay, so there has been a recent sighting of the uncontacted tribe, that is the MASCHO tribe people, documented by the indigenous rights NGO Survival International, and this actually raises the significant concerns because these people were totally uncontacted tribes. Okay, so that is why they were called as the world's largest uncontacted tribes. That is, you can actually not see them anywhere at all because they actually reside in the dense Amazon rainforest of southeastern Peru region. Okay, so they are basically the hunters and gatherers, and they actually they account to only 750 individuals, and they inhabit this particular region called Madre de Dios region near the Peru's borders with that of Brazil as well as Bolivia. Okay, so this is in Southern America. Here if you see, they actually maintain the characteristic features. I will just give an introduction before we move into the details of it. So here if you see, they have a huge reclusive lifestyle. That is, they actually stay always isolated and they are not seen in the public, or they don't actually live in a huge community like all the other tribes actually do. Okay, and here they actually have fear of disease transmission and they do not have any immunity for that. And of late they have actually been facing a number of challenges, such as there are logging that is taking place in the areas where they inhabit. There are also historical displacement that had actually taken place during the booming of this rubber industry, and there are a number of health risks that they actually face, which have the diseases or the viruses and bacteria that are actually transmitted by the outsiders are there, and they actually suffer from the loss of territory as well as the cultural erosion. Okay, so this is the basic that we need to know about this particular tribal group. So any kind of tribal group inhabiting any part of the world, their lifestyle and whether they are uncontacted or contacted, which is the area or the river around which they inhabit, their lifestyle, etc., become very, very important. So they have been recently cited, and that has actually been documented by the Indigenous Rights NGO, that is a non-governmental organization named Survival International, and this has actually raised concerns. Okay. So moving forward, let us understand more on the news. The tribes people, possibly the largest uncontacted people in the world, they live in the Amazon rainforest of the southeastern Peru. So this is what we are talking about, the MASCHO PIRO groups. Okay. So the photographs that were taken in late June show that more than 50 tribes people near the banks of a river close to the areas where the logging companies have actually granted concessions. Okay, so the government has actually sold that land, okay, in Peru to the logging companies. So here, this proximity to the logging activities poses a humanitarian disaster as stated by the director of Survival International, that is this particular non-governmental organization. And this situation actually underscores the tension between the MASCHO PIRO's need for isolation and encouraging the logging operation. So there is a tension between both. Now moving forward, let us understand about the MASCHO PIRO tribe, further. So they potentially number over 750 that I already told you. It's a nomadic group of hunter-gatherer residing in the Amazon jungles in the particular region of Madre de Dios region near the borders of Peru, Brazil and Bolivia. They are known for their reclusive nature, having very minimal contact with the outside world except for occasional interactions with the contacted Yain people. These are also a group of people. So historically, if you see, the MASCHO PIRO faced severe disruptions during the Peru's rubber boom in the year 1880 or in the 1880s, resulting in displacement, enslavement as well as mass killings of the people. That is why they actually live in very minimalistic numbers, 750. Since then, they have actually lived in isolation along the Manu River. So we'll be reading about this particular river as well. And recently, there have been, a lot of commercialization or the logging activities that have been taken place that forced them to come out of their forested refuges, indicating that they do not have anywhere else to retreat or to settle. So here you can actually see this particular region of Southern America, and these are actually the tribes. Now moving forward, let us know something about this particular NGO, Survival International. It is an NGO which is dedicated to the rights and the protection of indigenous tribes across the world. And also, it highlights the plight of uncontacted tribes like the MASCHO PIRO, advocating for their right to live undisturbed. Okay. Now, let us understand about the Yain people who are the contacted tribe community. The Yain people, a contacted indigenous group, they actually share the region with the MASCHO PIRO and they actually occasionally interact with them. And much of what is actually known about this particular tribe comes from the accounts of the Yain, okay, and the observations that have been done. And the Yain have reported that the MASCHO PIRO feel increasingly pressured and very, very upset about the logging concessions that have actually invaded their territory, because of which there's a lot of fragmentation and they actually lose their territory. And also, now let us actually understand about this particular river, that is the Manu River. They can also ask, Manu River often seen in news is associated with which one of the following tribes, or anyhow this question can actually be tweaked and asked in your exam. Now, the Manu River is a significant geographical feature in this particular Madre Dios region, forming part of traditional territory of this particular tribe. The river and its surrounding rainforest provide essential resources so that these tribes live a nomadic lifestyle, as well as the river's ecosystem is now threatened by logging activities which not only endanger this particular tribe but also the biodiversity in this particular region. Now let us solve few prelims as well as mains practice question. The first question reads, MASCHO PIRO tribe was recently seen in which of the following regions? Amazon rainforest of Brazil. No, this is actually wrong. Amazon rainforest of Peru. This is actually correct. Rainforest of Congo, wrong. And Southeast Asian jungles is also wrong. So since B is actually the right option, the answer will be option B. Now moving on to the second question, with reference to the recent instructions by the Assam government and the functioning of the Foreigners Tribunal, consider the following statements. So, FTs have the authority to detain individuals in transit camps if they fail to prove their citizenship. Yes, this is correct. And each FT is headed by a member drawn from the judges, the advocates and civil servants with judicial experience. This is also correct. The CAA 2019 provides a pathway to Indian citizenship for the Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains, Parsis and Christians from Pakistan, Afghanistan and Bangladesh who entered India on or before 31st December 2014. This is also correct. Since all the three statements are correct, the answer will be option D. Now moving forward, the third question reads, consider the following statements about Avalokiteswara. The name actually means a lord who looks down with compassion. This is actually correct. And Avalokiteswara is venerated in Theravada Buddhism. This is actually wrong. So here, since only first statement is correct, the answer will be option A. Moving forward, consider the following statements regarding the Thangka art. It is also known as the Thangka or the Thangka. It is a traditional Japanese Buddhist painting. No, it is wrong. Thangka paintings typically depict the life of Buddha, various bodhisattvas as well as significant events in the Buddhist history. Yes, this is correct. And applique Thangka is actually made using pieces of silk or brocade sewn together. So this is also correct. So since statements 2 and 3 are correct, here the answer will be option D. Now moving on to the final prelims question. Which among the following was never a member of the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization, that is the SEATO? Pakistan, yes, it was actually a member. United States, yes, it was. New Zealand, yes, it was. And India was actually never a member. So here the answer will be option D. Now moving forward, let us actually solve the mains practice question. The question reads, critically examine the need for a menstrual leave policy in India. So this is a 10 marker. So here, the approach to this particular question is categorized and broken down into the introduction, the body as well as the conclusion. In the introduction, we will actually introduce this particular concept of menstrual leave as a proposed policy aimed at supporting women during their menstrual period by providing them the designated leave days. This actually reflects an emerging recognition of women's health needs in the workplace as well as in the educational institution. So this is the introduction we will give. And towards the body, we will talk about the advantages of the menstrual leave policy like health and well-being, enhanced productivity, healthcare equity, educational continuity, gender sensitivity, etc. Moving forward, we'll discuss about the challenges as well as the criticisms like potential for stigma and discrimination, the implementation challenges that we face as well as the economic and operational impact. And towards the conclusion, we will conclude this particular answer by affirming that while menstrual leave has potential to advance gender equality and support women's health, its implementation, on the other hand, must be very carefully designed in order to avoid unintended negative consequences. So with this, we've actually come to the end of our daily news analysis discussion. For further updates and live videos, please do like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you.